And
action.
So, am I on? Now, how is it that I want to set it up so I can see their questions?
Yeah, it's coming on. Yeah, and you can minimize OBS.
Oh wow, that looks
Okay.
like time tunnel.
Yeah.
And all of the young.
So now I want to pull up Matrix.
No, you want to pull up Facebook, our group's Facebook, or your Union Realty Group YouTube channel.
It went off.
It is.
What's off?
No. It is.
I'm on.
It is on.
Okay, so I go to the
YouTube.com/user/Union Group Real Estate. Your
okay. I get it. But why isn't this going back up? There we go. Okay. Union Group. So just YouTube.
YouTube.com/user/Union Group Real Estate /live.
/like?
Live.
Live.
You're going to use the TV to play anything? Or?
The TV, the dongle is missing, so that's why.
You can see his face right here.
Oh, you see me?
Yeah.
Well, I see you right here.
Okay. Well, for my viewing audience, I'm trying to get there. All right, so live chat. These are, okay, I see who's on. So here's where they're going to pop up.
Yeah.
So
it's going to come on the side. The dongle is missing.
Can I turn off my voice?
Yeah, you have mute.
Okay, so I just muted. All right, so their questions will come up here. So I just have to look there every so often.
Every so often, yes.
All right, so let's get started, everyone. What's going on?
Well, so I wish that you would go over the templates on MLS that are specific to KDAD by seller and by buyer. Just like.
Are you talking about the KW forms
Yep.
that we had made for you?
Yep, that are on MLS in a template.
They're not on the MLS. They're on.
They're on the Market Center.
They're under the Market Center.
Yeah, and the internet.
Yeah, they're.
So not on MLS.
I thought there were some because when I created a contract a few weeks ago, there was one on.
They'll be in your .loop. Have loaded them into.
Yeah.
All the KW forms are in .loop.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for, and I wish that you would just okay, say seller. Let's go, and of course these are not all the forms we use, but the templates. If you would just do like a blurb about each one, boom, boom, and then go to the buyer category.
You make it sound so easy.
I do.
And I've changed my password again here, folks. What is it now? Okay, I think I did it right. What? Yeah, fill in both fields. Okay. This is embarrassing. It's showing how lame I am. I know my contracts.
Yes, you do.
Okay, I'm just trying to pull up. Damn it. Why isn't this going in? I have a new password, the whole thing. Okay. I'm just trying to pull up the forms, people, for Keller Williams we made to be able to talk about them. Because that's what you want.
Yes.
Okay. What the hell? Why is this not? Okay, excuse my language, folks, but it's not signing me in. Let's try this. It'll automatically sign me in. Anyone else have another question while I look up these forms?
I don't want to distract you.
You're not distracting me. I don't know why this is not working. All right, Robbie, can you just sign in here so I can see the forms? Your KW. I have to figure out what's up with my password later. So go ahead. What's your question?
I wanted to kind of see if you could maybe talk a little bit about escalation clauses and, especially currently how the market is, what you're seeing in terms of multiple offers and what tricks or techniques people are using to, be successful.
All right. Well, there's more to making a successful deal than just the escalation clause. But I recommend that you just get very good at doing, price opinion analysis, which is basically doing a CMA for your clients. You got to get really good at them, because you're going to have to basically educate them to what are the pendings showing, but then what are the final prices showing. Because you can look in the solds in the area and start looking at the ones you think are good comparables, and you'll see like, oh wow, there seems to be a trend in this area where they're all at the same list price as this one, but you're seeing here that they're selling around 106% or 109% of asking. So it helps you gauge where you think prices are going to come in. You also need to find out how many offers are coming in. A good indication is like how many pre-inspections. Smart agents, even if they offer an inspection report, they will not have it attached to the listing. They'll say you need to contact me to get it. Because if, let's say, they're providing an inspection report, then you would say, how many people have requested this inspection report? That's another good indicator of how many offers could possibly come in, just like how many pre-inspections have been done. The more pre-inspections, the higher the escalations will go. The more offers, the higher the escalation. The fewer the offers, though, I'm finding they don't necessarily escalate as much. That doesn't mean they're going to be getting in a house for $10,000 escalation. You still got to say, here's where the prices are falling. Okay? So that's how you kind of educate your client as to how high to escalate. And the other thing is you don't want to be shopping with a buyer who says they can spend $800,000 looking at $800,000 listings. You want to be looking at like a $700,000 listing, because that gives them money to escalate to that price. Okay? Because an $800,000 house probably is selling for $900 now, and a $700 is really selling for $800. So does that kind of help answer that bit a little? Okay. All right. Now let's find the internet now that we're here. This is a test of, can Eric find the forms? We'll see. Okay. Office post, market center. Resources, I'm assuming. Nope.
Documents.
No, it's in documents. That was my second guess. Okay, documents. Okay, contract forms. All right, you've got 9 of them. Have you read them?
Yes.
Inside and out?
Yes.
So are you, any questions particular on any of them?
No, I just want like an overview of, just so that now that I feel like I know what I'm doing a little bit, I just want an expert to just give me an overview of each one.
Well, I don't know if I'm the expert.
You are. I tested you for a while.
You've tested me?
Yep.
Okay. Let me close up these other things. I just want to make sure if I got any questions yet. Oh my gosh, the viewing audience has grown. Okay. Well, septic addendum, that talks to you about septic addendums. That talks about septic tanks. I haven't even read these in a while.
Okay, so
to be honest. But I will right now.
Looking at like, yeah.
I will breeze through these quickly because I don't want to waste the whole time on this.
Yeah.
The septic addendum, this is just saying that buyer, at your expense, is permitted to have their own licensed professional inspect and investigate the on-site septic system.
How is this different than Form 22S, the NWMLS provided form, Eric?
Well, this is just kind of adding more validity to it that says that you can, 22S is the seller's inspection and all. This is saying that you, if you want, your buyer can also have it inspected by their own company, is kind of what it's talking about. Because it's incorporated into and made part of Form 35 so that a buyer can negotiate of any repairs or modifications they need on the system from what maybe they learn.
So that meaning 22 yes is, I remember reading the verbiage and it said the seller has to do the test, take responsibility for fixing anything that comes
Right.
out and stuff. So how much stake in it does a buyer have? Or is that like seller ordered inspection sorta? So
Okay, first of all, these 9 forms, I didn't have all, these are not just me who said we need these forms. There were other brokers involved with Keller Williams who said they need these forms. This isn't one that I brought up as being needed, but some brokers who deal more out in septic land wanted it. I feel that, you know, with the 22S, you do have the coverage of the seller is supposed to have all this work done, you know, but they're just getting a report. This is saying you can have something investigated maybe further beyond. This, you know, because if you look at 22S, it doesn't say they have to pump necessarily. And maybe your clients want it pumped. This allows them to do an inspection, have a company come out and look and say, yeah, it needs to get pumped.
Okay.
You know, that might be just a loose example. Okay? So, let's look at the next one. We're going through these now. Okay, this is the oil tank. This is, a lot of times you guys neglect to look for oil tanks because they'll say, oh, this house is gas. But this home was built in the 50s. There are a huge amount of homes in the Seattle, Bellevue area built in the 50s that have oil tanks on property still. And they were converted to gas at some point. And not all of them may be officially decommissioned correctly. We only have decommissioning reports since in the 90s, I forget what year, but where people started keeping records of it, fire marshals and things. So this is, first of all, it's saying the seller acknowledges that the oil tank is on the property and has or has not been in service the last year, and in that they are unaware of whether the oil tank has been serviced in the past year. Okay, well, if they haven't used an oil tank because they've converted, that obviously wouldn't have been used in the last year. But not in service. All right, so this is kind of another inspection. This is allowing them, the seller's allowing the buyer to come in and inspect the property to find the oil tank and find out, has it been decommissioned? Because the seller's, you know, acknowledging they know there's an abandoned oil tank and they haven't serviced it in a year, but they may not even know if it's been decommissioned or not. Okay, and then it's being incorporated as part of your inspection contingency, and you can negotiate off it. So basically this is, folks, this is like, let's say you went and you do an inspection on a house, or you'll get good at it too, and you're going to be able to identify, you'll be in a basement, you'll say, oh wow, that's an old oil line, I can see, but there I don't see any evidence of oil tank or anything. So, but if they have evidence of an oil line coming in, you might want to put this in. Or let's say you do an investigation and you do have an inspection and they say, yeah, there's evidence of an oil line. Well, part of your inspection response is you might want to add this, throw this into the contract now, because this is saying seller is allowing you to hire a company like Philco to come on property and investigate the land. They're going to go around with their detector to find out where that oil tank is, if there is one, and if there is, they're going to dig down to it, and they're going to identify if it's been decommissioned or not. Because the last thing you want to do is let your client buy a house with an abandoned oil tank that could have oil sitting in it. Because if that oil ever leaks out to the ground, they have what's considered a biohazard, and they're looking at 6 figures, like $200,000, to have all the dirt removed from their property because it's contaminated. So oil tanks are a very serious business. That's why if you have a client and let's say you're buying the property and they did decommission it, and the sellers provide here's the decommissioning report, here's certified by the fire marshal, everything was done correct, you better remember two things. One, tell your client to keep that forever. Because when you sell that house, you're going to have to provide that same document to the next seller, or next buyer, excuse me. And it's going to be passed down from buyer to buyer to buyer to buyer to buyer forever. As long as that oil tank's sitting on that property, that it's been decommissioned. That way you know it's okay because it's been drained, it's been washed, it probably has some fill in it, and now you don't have to worry about if it leaks on the property someday. People don't dig down and remove oil tanks because it would create a gigantic hole in the yard. So very important that you always remind them. I would also, number two, always make sure you keep a copy of that in your .loop file too, because if they sell in 5 years and guess what? Well, I can't find the decommissioning report you gave me. Well, you've got it. Okay? So, but if, and I've had properties where, there was evidence and the sellers go, oh no, there's no oil tank, no oil tank. And I go, okay, well, at our own cost, we're going to come on property and we're going to look around, and sure enough, we found them.
And what made you, because you saw an oiled line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just assume, any home built from the 60s or earlier could very well have oil tank on property.
Okay.
60s, they started building homes with, forced air and all that, but, with gas. But it was very, very common in the Northwest to use oil tanks. So you really, just don't assume that when you see a mid-century and it's got, forced air, heat, gas, that it's always been that way. Okay?
Yeah, good.
All right.
You have online question.
All right. Let's go to that right now.
John,
Yeah, go ahead.
so with PLIA, the pollution liability insurance,
The liability, yeah.
agency,
Yeah.
they will provide up to $60,000 in free insurance coverage, but you have to submit your
You have
information
to-
within 6 months of purchase.
Right. That's another good point. If you have a buyer and they're buying a house that has an oil tank and it's still being heated by oil, that house, they need to, generally they will sign up with the same company who they were with, who the previous owner had for servicing and providing oil. Well, you want to contact that company, find out when was that tank last serviced, because it should be serviced probably every year, one. And then two, when they sign up for service with that company, they want to have them sign them up for the PLIA insurance, because the oil companies will sign them up for free, like you said. But you need to do that when you buy the house. Don't even wait 6 months. Even though they say you got 6 months, that should also be on your radar to inform your client, do this immediately when you set it up. Because down the road, they may not be able to get the coverage if they're waiting too long. Okay?
Do you have a right to ask them to remove a below ground to an above ground tank? Why would anyone?
What, a seller? You would ask the seller to remove their below ground oil tank that's functioning to an above ground tank? I think that seller would look at your buyer and go, no.
So what happened with a PLIA example for the state of Washington is they have an excerpt about a broker who was involved in a transaction and found out for inspection the old tank was leaking.
Yeah.
So they asked the seller to remove the tank, remove the contaminated soil. It's a big
Well, that's different. That's a different question. You didn't phrase it that way. No. If you do an investigation and you find the soil's contaminated and all, as a buyer, I would absolutely go to the seller and say, this all has to be removed, the tank, the soil, and everything. That seller's going to be pissed off, but the reality is that seller, it's, as I've said to many a listing agent, I know it's unfortunate for them to hear this news today, but unfortunately it's happened while they own the ship, and the ship's not going to sail till it's fixed.
Doesn't every oil tank leak?
Oil tanks do not always leak.
But
They are well built and they last a long time. But again, that's why you have PLIA insurance when you have an oil tank. That's why you want it serviced once a year and have it looked at and make sure it's doing okay. But yeah, like anything, eventually something will rot. So that's why people are slowly getting rid of oil tanks. A lot of people are. And when you have it decommissioned, you don't have to worry about it leaking ever again. It's done. The oil's out. Okay?
So do you have inspections on oil tanks when you have an active oil furnace?
I would call the company who provides oil and say, when did the last time was this oil tank serviced? And if it hadn't been within the year, I would say then this needs to be serviced now before we buy it.
And that's the tank, not the furnace.
Right.
Do they actually dig up?
No, they just, no, I don't know what they do exactly. But, you know, they come and they pour the oil in, okay? You know, I don't know anyone, what you're digging here, there is no answer for me, and that is, I don't know anyone who's going to go around and dig up your oil tank to make sure all the soil's good. They might take samples of the soil around it, but that's not even going to be the oil company doing that. You're going to have to do some investigation. If your client wants soil checked out around, you're going to have to find that company that's willing to take the soil and do it. But my guess is they're not going to have a turnaround as fast as you're probably going to need in an inspection. And if your client's that worried, you might just inform them maybe they need to move on to a house without an oil tank. Okay?
Or make sure they got PLIA.
Well, PLIA's not going to cover everything probably. All right, John. I went to the current issues in RE, last week, Larry, and he was strongly encouraging to include AL and AP. Can you please comment? Oh, gosh. Good old Larry. Okay, AL, AP. Let's look at it. First of all, Larry talks a lot.
Hi, Larry.
I like Larry. Larry's a good guy. I take his core class every 2 years. Because I have to. Just like you do. Okay, let's pull him up. Okay. AP. Here we go. It's coming. I swear, internet in the world is never as fast as they say it is. This is the slowest moving. Okay, here we go. AP. Loan information notice. Buyer represents and warrants the following information is true and correct. Buyer made loan application, which include their name, social security, property purchase, and loan amount on this date to that lender, and that authorizes listing firm, broker, seller to contact lender to inquire about the status of the buyer's loan approval at any time before closing. Buyer will execute an authorized form if required by lender to accomplish the same. Buyer has provided the following information. Okay, folks, this is only going to be used if you want to use it. So Larry says all of them. Well, Larry's not out there in the every day like we are, okay? 22 AP is what you send over when you want, and you can only send it over one time, folks, and that's on your 22A. If you've waived 22A, you can't even send it, so.
This is the listing agent sending it, right?
No.
Status, or? Yeah,
the listing agent will send it over. I'm pulling up 22A here. It's slowly loading.
There's a lag as well, so I'm seeing your old form.
Oh my God, what the hell is going on here?
It doesn't match your personality to have it be slow.
No, it doesn't. My personality is I want it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys right here, loan information. There's your 22AL. Whatever days and amount in here you said after. If you leave it blank, it's 10 days. After 10 days, you can send over AL, and you can learn all this information. You can send it only one time. Buyer has 3 days to have 22 AL filled out. Their lender has to answer those questions. So it's not a bad thing, but do you have to do it on every single one? you know, that's up to you. It's not a bad thing to send over. It's not really a negotiating thing. It's not changing anything. It's just letting you know where you are on the loan process. That's all. You know, sometimes we just call the lenders and just say, hey, how are we doing? What's new? But it's not a bad thing to do. He's saying you should do it always. Yeah, if you have a 22A, I see no problem with always sending it over when the timeline allows you to send over 22AL. It's a good practice, and it does keep you more informed. So I'll agree with him if you have a 22A. If you don't have a 22A, well then it's kind of a moot point. Okay, and then the other one, hold on, was 22 AP, was it?
Yeah, 1 second, let me take a look.
I'm like, yeah, 22 AP. So 22 AP, loan inform, no wait, request for, okay, loan information notice. Let's look at that. Come on. Here we go. Well, no, that's it. 22 AP, we were just doing that. Wait a minute. Did I open AP and not AL? No, they're the same.
No, AP is much more extensive.
Oh, it is? That tells you I've never really used it that much.
It asks the lender if the buyer has provided pay stubs, W-2s, 1040s, 1050s.
No, all of that is on AL too. So they kind of overlap. Yeah, because that's AP. Let me go down here. AP. Oh, I've only opened AP. I've been talking only AP, folks. Okay, and let me go back to AL then.
AL is much more abbreviated.
Okay, let's look at AL. Because I only have AP. So what I was talking about was AP, folks. Yes. Come on. Now we're hearing it out. Okay. I would never use AL, folks. Buyers shall use the loan information notice, AP for that notice. Okay, now I get it. Okay. AP is what the buyer provides back. AL is what you send over when you request the loan information. So AL is not abbreviated AP. So what Larry is saying is, if you have 22A, and you reach the 10 days or however many days in there where now you can request the loan update, you send over 22AL.
Or you call and just say, how's it going?
Well, if you want. But this is a more formal way, and the reason this is more formal is 22AL says the buyer has to reply to 22AL with 22AP. And 22AP is asking detailed questions, whereas like a conversation with a loan officer, you know, are you going to sit there, loan officer, with AP in front of you and say, hey, have you been provided pay stubs? Have you been provided IRS? Probably not. You're probably going to go, hey, I'm just checking in. Are we moving forward? Is everything good? Any red flags? That's probably what you're going to say. AP is going to come back and they're going to have to tell you all the things they have and don't have. Then you would have more specific questions to ask them down the road. So yeah, Larry is right. It's a good habit to get in to use them if you have a 22A in your contract. Okay?
If we don't, question related, if we don't have a 22A, is it required for us to send the pre-approval letter from the bank along with our offer?
Well, is that a question someone asked? Or you're just asking? You're just, okay.
Yeah, that's a good question.
If you've waived 22A, do you have to show a pre-approval letter and disclose the loan? Well, let me put it to you. If you are a listing agent and someone waived 22A and they just sent over an offer, you would look at it and go, wait a minute, are you buying this as cash? Where's your proof of funds for cash? Oh no, it's a loan. Okay, well where's your pre-approval? You would never let your seller sign any contract without a pre-approval letter in front of you or evidence of cash. So yes, even if you do 22A, you should still do a 22EF, and you check other, and you put in there that they have a loan with so-and-so bank with so-and-so amount as the money down, and you would still put in the pre-approval letter. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, any questions, or we're going to go back to these forms?
I had a somewhat related question.
Okay.
In
What?
this situation, what happens if a buyer is putting a cash offer,
Mm-hmm.
but they have funds, everything is good,
Mm-hmm.
and then they decide to
Do a loan?
do a loan in the background, and given that they'll close, you have to close on time.
Right.
It have to be disclosed as an agent of.
Well, if your buyer says they're going to do cash, and they provided that they have all this cash, right? And you've proven that, and now you're mutual. Once you're mutual, there's no form in there saying they cannot move to a loan without a seller approval, because they have cash to close. But what you need to let your client know is if they want to use a loan, they have a closing date on that cash offer. And so they need to realize that seller may not give them an extension, because a lot of times cash offers are closing like 2 weeks, 1 week. And now your guy says, well, money's cheap. I have all the money. I could close if I wanted to, but I prefer now to get a loan, but I'm going to need 30 days to close. Well, now you're back in a position of negotiating a contract, and that seller may not be so amenable. They just may say, no, we're not going to extend past 2 weeks.
The agent is just letting them know and work through the process. They may say it's maybe not 10 days, but maybe 2 extra days, 3 extra days.
It just
It's
depends.
just a matter of working together and.
I mean, yeah, I've
But
heard
legally,
cash.
there's no. I mean, there's legally nothing for as an agent for us to disclose or do anything.
Well, I would disclose it absolutely, because this
That
is
doesn't
major
work.
information. You don't want to not disclose it. As soon as you become aware, you need to say, hey, I just need to let you know that their financial advisor has said money's cheap. Why don't you just get a loan rather than pull all this cash out? You know they have the cash, so you know there's not going to be an issue closing on the loan. Is that okay with your seller? But we would like to extend right now. You need to be upfront now, because they might be more nice about extending if they hear about it a couple days after getting in contract. If you're supposed to close in 2 weeks, and now you're there the day before closing saying, hey, we need to push out because they're going a loan now, not cash, they're going to be really upset with you. And not even only this scenario, folks. Don't wait till 2 days before closing to lay something on the other party. If you know some really material information that could affect close dates, you need to let them know sooner than later. It will always be worse if you wait till the day before closing to say we need an extension. When you knew that the lender was telling you a week out, well, we're trying everything we can to close on time, but we might need an extension. Well, if you called me a week before and said, hey, we're working hard, everything's going along, but the lender said it just might take a few extra days to close, is that going to be okay with your seller? Let's not sign anything to extend until the day before closing, just to keep the pressure on the lender to close. That seller and that agent are going to be a little more open to it than if you tell them the day before closing, because they're going to go, and you didn't know this before and now you're just telling us? They can make it really tough. And if you're in a multiple situation, you waived all these things, folks, that seller may just look at your $40,000 earnest money and go, let's just keep the $40,000 and put it back on the market. It's not our fault they can't close.
Well, there's a risk in the. I mean, there's always a risk even in the beginning. It's just like there's lower risk than higher risk.
Yeah.
Because the seller may say, well, I don't want to do it because I have 3 other offers. So
Yeah.
let's not do it.
Well, if you had a cash offer and then you turn around 2 days later and you tell me you want to do a finance offer now and you want to extend, if you put in if you put a cash offer in and you told me you needed 30 days to close, I'd be calling you right up and saying, why do you need 30 days if it's all cash? We want money in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And I don't know many lenders that are going to turn around and close in 2 weeks. Very few will have that capability. Some might. But here's the problem.
Yeah.
It's all dependent on an appraisal. You think all of a sudden you're going to fill out loan docs, get an appraisal, get it back, and close in 2 weeks?
Well, 10 days. I think appraisal is about 10 days. So I've seen 20 days.
If you're lucky, it just depends.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables once you go into loans. A lot of timelines, a lot of different people.
Before pre-approval too nowadays, right? I mean, they're doing the whole thing. In the
It
beginning,
depends
so-
who the lender is.
Yeah.
Some do, not all.
Big banks are doing it.
They're doing fully underwritten loans?
Wells
I have
Fargo
not
is
heard of
doing it right
that.
now.
Wells Fargo.
Wells Fargo is doing it right now.
Oh, you know why?
Bank of America.
Because
we're
of
competitive.
us.
With the-
Okay, yeah.
No, it's because they've heard too many agents saying to clients, don't go with the big banks because they don't fully
Maybe
underwritten
that's why.
and you're not going to be able to get in a house.
Maybe that's the reason.
That's the only reason why, I can tell you.
Because BECU, I don't think they might be doing it, but I have a BEC cannot find it there.
Well, if one does, they'll probably all follow.
Yeah. Smaller
Okay.
ones are doing it for sure, yeah.
All right, let's move on.
If the seller decides not to grant an extension and grab your earnest money, do you think that they would be accused of being just obstructionists?
Who? The seller? All right, first of all, you guys are, what's the number one thing we always have to tell a client? We're not an attorney, okay? We only fill out forms. So, the question was, if a seller has a contract in front of him and it's mutually signed and here's the close date, and the seller and the buyer says, well, we need to extend closing, and the seller says no. And now could the seller be liable for, how did you word it?
Being obstructionist.
Being obstructionist? I would say probably not. But then again, I'm not a lawyer. Because a lawyer in a court is going to look at the contract and say, buyer, you contracted to close on that date. You didn't. Buyer, you chose to waive your financing. No one forced you. Seller didn't want to extend the closing. They don't have to. Sellers are not required to extend closing, people, just because you say you need more days to close on a loan. There are many deals that fall apart because sellers do not extend the close date. So don't assume it's an easy thing. Many sellers get upset and just don't want to deal with you. You know, there's a lot of buyers out there, they'll go 1, 2, they're like, we need a third extension because we're still working on this loan because they're working with, you know, ABC mortgage lender at SeaTac Airport, who should not even probably be in business because they can't close a loan. And these sellers do get upset, and these sellers say, no more extensions, sorry, we're keeping your earnest money. And guess what, folks, they're keeping the earnest money.
If you move to interpleading, can the buyer hold up the relisting or
No.
a sale?
No.
The best option
No.
is that they get some of their money back if they were lucky in a sale.
All right, if there's a fight and you're going to interplead her on earnest money, that seller can turn around and relist that property the moment you send the rescission over on the contract. Earnest money disputes are separate of the contract to purchase the house. They can put it right back on the market. You can't stop them. And as far as an interpleader, that's between lawyers as to how it's going to be played out. You need to step aside. You need to tell them they need the advice of a lawyer. You stop telling them whether they're going to get their earnest money or not because you don't know. You're not a lawyer. You don't know what a judge is going to say. Okay? Attorney review addendum. This is just if you can use this one if you have a buyer who's nervous or whatever and they say they want their attorney to review it, and if the attorney disapproves they can get out. I will be honest, the 5-page or 6 pages of bulk of the contract, there is a clause in there about you're advised to get an attorney review if you want. Honestly, I would probably cross this out if I was a listing agent, because this is saying I can walk away just because the attorney doesn't like the way we wrote the contract. So that's giving that buyer a lot of power to come back and say, well, the attorney wants to redo this and this and this, and we're going to walk after you already discussed the terms of the contract and all. I would throw it out. I wouldn't have it in any of my contracts with any of my listings, and I certainly probably, and if my buyer felt adamant about it, because when I have my buyers sign contracts, I always explain, here, if you want to have this reviewed by attorney, please do. but my attitude about this, folks, is that attorneys should be reviewing that contract before you're in mutual. Because I'm certainly, as a listing agent, never going to allow this in that contract, because it's blatantly lets you get out of the contract. So that's my opinion on that one. But you can use it if you like. Good luck if you get it accepted. Repair addendum. Remember, not all of these were ones I said I needed for you. Okay. Okay, this is a repair addendum. So it's saying you conducted an inspection and that this repair addendum is being given in response to Form 35. This is detailing the repairs that are going to be made. And it says all permits will be obtained that are needed. Bond and contractors will be used. Funny, what do I always tell you guys put on 35R for repairs? All work to be done by licensed, bonded contractors and receipts to be provided 5 days prior to closing. This is kind of wording it in by a lawyer now, that what I always say to add in. This is just saying the work has to be completed no longer than 10 days before closing, and that you're allowed to re-inspect the work. And in the event if there's a conflict between this and the balance, including the inspection contingency, that this will control over Form 35. So it's just another way of doing a Form 35R, folks. That's what this is. Yeah, Robbie.
I know that there are multiple forms that you're going through so that we can have it as a substrate and have questions.
Yeah.
So,
oh, we have another question?
it's from me.
Oh, well, I never know if it's from you, Robbie, or from the viewing audience.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll preface it. So this is what my question is. So recently, just because of all these big banks notoriously known for delayed closing, this is the exchange that I had with the lender. I will quickly read it so that you tell me if I have taken on additional responsibility in playing lawyer's duty. And second thing is, are my clients covered with this exchange with Bank of America?
Mm-hmm.
This is what I wrote. Person X, I will call them Person X. Person X, who is with Bank of America, thanks for confirming that Bank of America is committed to serving its high-profile customers to the best of its abilities. We discussed how competitive the Seattle real estate market is and how we will make my clients' offer stand out with the following terms, like waive financing contingency, waive appraisal, and high earnest money, 5% up to 5% of purchase price. We also chatted about big banks like Bank of America being known for not closing loans on time, and was the general impression that other real estate agents in Seattle market at large have. Besides the loan pre-approval not being looked at favorably by sellers and listing agents, the worst thing that can happen is the loan not closing on time with my client potentially losing their earnest money. Now, you were super confident during our conversation that Bank of America can close the loan normally in 35 days and that you could make the loan closing happen even in 30 days if it came to that. And that waiving financing should not be an issue when we submitted offers. I want to send this mail to you to make sure that we are on the same page, and it is with your confidence to have the loan funded on time. Are we going to go ahead and waive the financing contingency? Please acknowledge receipt of that what is stated here is understood. Person X.
And you're sending that to the lender?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So, and the lender responds saying that, thank you for taking the time to discuss and talk with me. I have pre-approved your clients for a purchase price of X with X down. However, please understand that this is not a commitment to lend. We will have to have the file reviewed by our underwriting team once we have a ratified contract.
Right, and you know what, I don't need to hear any more of that lender's letter.
That's
a typical lender reply of there's no guarantee, nothing's in their control, underwriters haven't, so it's not even a fully underwritten loan. So basically, I would make sure your client was CC'd on both of those.
Yeah.
So, and then just say to your client, okay, I just want to let you know, this is just, I wrote this. I want you to understand now the difference between what they're doing and if you work with a lender that's fully underwritten. You can feel a lot more secure about if you're going to waive financing. They have not fully underwritten you at B of A. They could pull up red flags that suddenly you can't loan on.
You know, I've done this and at a very high level is I actually ask them qualifying questions. You know, explain to me your process. I mean, they don't want to get too much detail. But
Who? Oh, lenders?
The lenders, yeah.
I'm just totally.
Why would
well, you can ask a lender all their information on how they process their loans, this and that, if you want, or you can be like Eric and just be totally upfront. Do you fully underwritten this? Are you fully underwriting this? Are you fully underwriting this? Are you telling me that that went to underwriters, they have fully reviewed the file, any red flags have been addressed, and that all you're waiting for is an appraisal? And if they don't say yes, then that means they have not, period.
That's a qualifying question.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice, yeah.
She also
I don't like
adds
to waste my time.
Yeah, she also
What?
she adds saying that I don't see a problem with your clients, and they have very solid, and I'm confident that the loan will be a breeze.
Yeah.
Closing in time should not be an issue at all, which is
Right.
again the standard verbiage,
Right,
I think.
right. No
how much-
lender, you guys, even a local lender who does a fully underwritten loan, no mortgage broker will ever guarantee you the loan will close. None. You're never going to get that in writing. None. There are too many things. Even if you've been fully underwritten, there could be suddenly they could have a job loss. You know, they're not going to say we're going to close. They're not even going to advise, you know, when you say talk to your lender before we waive financing and make sure that they understand the risk and that they feel confident they're going to close. They're still not even going to tell your client, don't worry, waive it, we're going to close. They're going to say, well, we have no red flags, we're just waiting for appraisal. It's up to you if you want to, you know, waive or not, because I can't guarantee anything, but I feel pretty good about it.
But in this case, have I just taken on the additional responsibility of not?
You
doing
have
my-
taken on no responsibility, Robbie. All you did was write a letter to the lender asking for some guarantees. The letter back basically did not give you any of the guarantees, and that's all that was the exchange between you and the lender. That wasn't taking on any responsibility. You were just doing due diligence as their agent. Okay?
Okay.
All right?
All right. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. The next one, repair and
No other questions online. Going with the forms. Yeah.
yeah. So, non-financing handler's right to inspect. Okay, this one you always want to use, folks. If you waive 22A, this is one that I wanted. Form 13. What Form 13 is saying is, look, we've waived financing. Well, financing says they have to allow appraisers on property, things like that, right? All this is saying is that we've waived financing, but we still are doing financing, and so we probably are going to need an appraiser to be allowed on the property, and that's what this is, the seller's agreeing to allow them on the property. Because guess what, folks? If you don't have this in there, that seller could be a jerk and just say, I'm sorry, I don't want anyone on my property. And you've waived financing, and they need to have their appraiser walk inside the house, and the seller is saying, no, I don't want anyone in my house. And if you don't have this in the contract, and you've waived financing, there's nothing in the contract that says they have to let them.
I'm kind of confused here. So if I'm a seller, and I see an offer come in where I know they can do financing, but they're waiving it, why would I want that buyer? I mean, it's still a risk.
Okay, from a
right?
seller perspective, okay, a good question.
I mean, if it's
Why
cash
would I
offer,
want to go with a buyer who waived financing? Why don't they leave financing in?
versus a cash offer who has money in the bank?
Well, first of all, cash usually wins over financing, but sometimes cash doesn't win, because what if the cash offer is $50,000 less than the finance offer, right? And the financing offers in multiples, the reason people are waiving financing is they're taking away risk factors to sellers. The risk is all on the buyer now. You better close, because if you don't, the seller is confident that they're going to get the earnest money. So basically, it's you by waiving things, folks, you're locking your client in so that this seller is confident that they are going to get all that earnest money if you don't close.
But earnest money is like 1% is what they're locking to, right? What is it?
No,
5%.
5% of the purchase price. So if you got an $800,000 home, right, and in multiple offers, I don't know many agents who are putting low earnest money. I mean, if it's a multiple offer,
100,000 earnest offer, earnest deposit.
It's you can go above 5%, but the maximum the seller can come behind you again. You can correct me. Is only 5%.
Yeah, that's right.
right? But I'm going to talk about that in a minute too.
Okay.
Yes, if you have a client and they say, "Well, I'm only going to do 1% down," so that's $8,000 earnest money on an $800,000 purchase, and you're in a multiple offer. I look at my client and go, "Do you want to buy the house?" Because you're not. If you put $8,000 earnest money down, the contract says 5% of the purchase price is the only amount that will ever be at risk of earnest money, right? Well, you're in a multiple offer buyer. Do you think the seller is looking to people who put all the skin in the game, meaning 5% or more? Yes, they are. Do you think they're going to look at you seriously if you put $8,000 down when they have 3 other offers in front of them and they've probably all done at least $40,000 or more? You're insulting the seller right now, folks. You're showing the seller you're not willing to put enough money in to risk it. You're not showing to me, buyer, that you really want this house bad enough that you're going to put all the skin in the game like these other 3. So let's go talk to the other 3 now and work out a deal.
So increase the earnest deposit to make it attractive to offer. Waive the contingency.
Yeah.
Take that risk as a buyer, and if possible, close in 20 days. You can do all that.
Well, yeah, but you know, before you waive, increase earnest money, and say you're closing in 20 days, you better make sure the lender says they can close in 20 days. But a lot of lenders can if they know that they can order that appraisal day 1, and they've already fully underwritten it. But you want to find that out. But you just, you know, your buyers, I mean, we were talking earlier today about a buyer who didn't want to do everything there, and the agent was really frustrated because it's like, well, I want to win. Well, sometimes you're going to have to write bad offers even though you know it's a bad offer, and you're going to have to go in and fight to get that offer accepted. But your buyer is going to have a learning curve then, and they may have to lose 1 or 2 offers before they get up to speed with the reality of what they need to do to get into a house. But the only way they're going to get there, some of these buyers, is they lose a couple, and you as a good agent are communicating with that listing agent, and you're finding out what did the winning offer do that we didn't do, so you can communicate back to your buyer selling and have them start to hear things. Well, they put 5% down and they released all their earnest money. Oh, well, you go back to your buyer who wants to only put 1% down and not release anything. Well, after losing 2 houses and hearing that's the same thing they're losing on, guess what? Your buyer probably is going to wake up and step up and go, okay, we got to do this.
So is it wrong to advise your buyer client to waive contingency, inspection and?
Okay, question is it wrong to advise your buyer to waive all these things? No, but here's the way you got to do it, and do it in writing. And that's why you have that 1 KW form, the buyer memo, that goes over all the things that scenarios out there people are doing and waiving on. You want to have in writing that they are aware of the risks. And you know, when I'm talking on the phone and we're working out the deal and we're talking about what we're going to waive, guess what? I then email them afterwards and I go, okay, here's all the things we're doing on this deal, and I want to make sure I got it all correct again. We're going to escalate to this price in these increments. You want to waive financing, waive appraisal, we're going to release this much earnest money, blah, blah, what all over the particular terms are, and say, I just want to make sure you're aware of this and you understand all the risk involved, and let me know, and I'll start writing it.
I usually do that.
Yeah, and then you're protected.
You're protected. I need you to give me some information, and part of it is yes, no
Yeah.
for those.
So anyway, start using Form 13 if ever you waive 22A, always.
So if on 22A, you're on paragraph 3C, which is the appraisal less the sales price,
Mm-hmm.
and you're waiving the financing, but you're not waiving paragraph 7.
Mm-hmm. You still put in
You
Form
still put
13.
in Form 13.
Absolutely, because you waived the financial part. Always, if you waive...
I haven't waived the rights under paragraph 7 of low appraisal.
Isn't that what 22AA is supposed to do? If you want to keep the appraisal, whereas you're waiving the financing.
Well, okay, I'll tell you all the forms you use in that in a second. He always likes to stick it to me.
Okay.
Anyway,
I don't want to get stuck.
no. If you, let's say, if you're going to waive just the financing part but keep the appraisal part in, still put in Form 13, folks. It doesn't change. It's not a strong negotiating thing. It doesn't affect the terms of a deal. Just put it in there. Okay? Form 14, non-refundable earnest money addendum. If you guys are going to release any money at all and it's non-refundable, you better be putting this Form 14 in there because this is the language you need. Do not try to write your own language on a Form 34 because you'll be practicing law and it will collapse on you if there's a fine on earnest money because you wrote it. Because this spells it out, you know, that either you're releasing the full amount of earnest money or a certain amount of your earnest money, and it's going to be released to seller within however many days, placement with the escrow, and it says right here that earnest money, the earnest money deposit release shall become non-refundable, applicable to the purchase price, immediately become the property of the seller, and is no longer earnest money. You know why they say that? Because now you've just made it no longer earnest money. So now a lawyer can't come in and say, hey, it says non-refundable release of earnest money, but here over in the contract it says that the earnest money is due back to them. Well, guess what, lawyer? Not only did they release the non-refundable earnest money, but we all agreed that now it's no longer considered earnest money. So you have a very weak argument, lawyer, to come back and say, well, the contract still says they get their earnest money even though you released it, non-refundable. That's why we say it's no longer earnest money and it's applied as the down payment. Okay?
So that protects the buyer, right?
No, it protects the seller. This is all about letting the seller know that they have the money and you're not getting it back. Okay? So always use this if you're going to release your earnest money. 16. Let me see. What's this one about? Notice the seller inspection report. This you will always use if you're a listing agent and you are providing an inspection report to buyers. Because this is basically, it's a disclaimer to protect your seller. They're just saying it's part of, they're saying the inspection report now that you're being given is part of Form 17 disclosure. And that it's procured by the seller and is provided for informational purposes only. And it's not a warranty or express or implied about the condition of the property. And it's saying the buyer is still advised to do their own inspection if they want, and that they have that opportunity. This protects your seller, folks. So if you're a listing agent, you want to always throw a Form 16 over if you have an inspection you're sharing. That was one of the forms I wanted. Memo to brokers, memo to buyers. This is stuff for you to read. I'm not going to go over it. You can read it. It's things you should know. Okay? Now, let's structure waiving financing. Okay, folks? Let's see. So what you want to do, you want to waive financing. Here's the proper way to do it. You still put in Form 22A, okay? Then, let's say you want to keep in the appraisal. Then you would open up 22AW, and you're gonna, where are we? Where'd it go down here?
Is that a limited appraisal waiver or AW is appraisal?
22AW is the buyer waives financing contingency, but it's saying you're keeping paragraph 7 in for the appraisal portion, that's not waived, okay? But that it's saying you cannot terminate the agreement on financing side, okay? So you want to waive just the financing. You're going to put 22A in. You're going to do 22AW, okay? Then I would put in also Form 13 that allows you still to inspect the property. And then if they're keeping the appraisal addendum in, you might want to ask them, are you willing to put some money towards a low appraisal? If so, you need to put in 22AD. If not, then don't worry about it. Just don't put it in. But you have the protection still of if it's less than sales price, you can negotiate with them. Okay? Now, let's go back and say you want to waive all of financing. Then you would put in, where is the form? I'm looking for that. Where is it? Okay. I think it's an AW. No, we just looked at that
So when you were
one.
talking about structuring the waiving of financing, you weren't talking, now you're gonna talk about what? All of financing, I don't understand the difference.
There's two things on financing. One, page 2 is all about appraisal protection. Page 1 is all about the underwritten policy.
Okay.
All right? What I just discussed was the limited waiver, meaning we're waiving the financial side of it, but we're not waiving the appraisal part.
Okay.
But now let's say you want to waive everything.
Okay.
Okay?
I see.
That would be a cash offer.
Then you're going to put in 22A. And the reason you put in 22A, folks, is you're still saying, we're doing a loan, here's the loan, here's our pre-approval, right? But you're putting in with it 22AR, and at the bottom, you'll check the third box, buyer waives the financing contingency set forth in the financing addendum. Okay?
Which box?
The third
speak
one.
under with? Yes.
There's 3 boxes. If you open 22AR, there's seller's right to terminate no. Seller's notice of termination, buyer's notice of waiver of financing contingency. So you're waiving financing in your offer, you put in 22A, you put in this 22AR, you check the box that says the buyer waives all of financing contingency, and you still then put in the Form 13, which says you can still go on the property, the appraiser, because they're going to need to, because you still are financed. Okay?
Yes.
So don't be the kind that said, you don't want to be an agent who, well, we're going to waive finance, so let's just not put 22A in. Okay? And we'll just send a pre-approval letter over with the offer. Okay? If you do that, that seller can still mess with you. He can refuse to allow the appraiser on the property. And now if that appraiser can't come on the property, they can't close on the loan, and now your client could lose their earnest money. Yes?
So you had a lot of Form 22s. I just want to go over
Yep.
which ones. So 22A, 22AW, AD, and AR, and then Form 13.
In which scenario?
So yeah, that's the thing, right?
Oh my God.
Okay. You want to do, okay. You want to waive financing,
Yes.
but not appraisal. You put in 22A, 22AW.
Okay.
and Form 13. You want to waive all of financing, you put in 22A, 22AR, and Form 13. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And now you want to waive financing, not appraisal, but you want to put a limit on a low appraisal, let's say, okay?
That'd be AD.
Then you would do 22A, 22AW, and then 22AD, and Form 13.
Okay.
Okay? Those 3 scenarios.
Thank you.
It's a lot to remember, but it all makes sense when you start
Become familiar
reading.
with it, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay? Any questions in my audience? Let me look really quick. None? Lenny wants proof of funds. Well, of course.
No, it's like for the previous question.
I know, I know. So, any other questions, folks? You still got 15 minutes.
I have one.
Yeah.
When we sign the buyer agency agreement, it says we got paid by buyers, and whatever the buyer says that if they cooperate with other agents, they don't have to pay the agents. How can we get that?
Show me the. We're looking here
Yeah.
or here?
Yes.
Okay. I wouldn't sign that. Did you write that?
No, this provided by a coach.
Okay.
Coach.
All right. I'm going to be a devil's advocate. Buyer agency agreements. Okay. Buyer agency. Okay. Compensation. That's left blank on your buyer agency agreement, folks. It used to be buyer agency agreements long back in the dark ages. They actually said in them that you were guaranteed a 3% commission. They took all that out because it was hard to get a lot of buyers to sign a buyer agency agreement. Because buyers are like, well, what you're telling me here is we go and we buy a short sale. Or what you're telling me is if I'm buying a $2 million property, well, when you get that high in the numbers, a lot of those high ticket items, they only pay 2.5%. So if you're telling me you're writing in, you're guaranteeing me a 3% commission, then basically that means that buyer not only has to have a down payment at closing, they need to also bring in another 0.5% commission so you get paid out 3% because the seller's not paying you. So what you have over here, and I understand the coaches are saying for MLS listed properties broker to be compensated according to the listing agreement or 3% of the purchase price, whichever is greater. If the listing agreement is not in fact meaning like a for sale by owner, broker to be compensated 3% of the purchase price. So that's spelling it out right there. You're saying you're going to get paid 3%. And if your buyer wants to sign that, good for you. You're going to get paid 3%. And I know there are agents out there who use these, and they're very successful using these, and they do enforce their 3%. But if you're going to be an agent like that, you better be a very confident agent, and you better be supplying so much in extra services that they don't balk at the fact that they got to cough up some extra money to pay you at the end because the seller isn't. Personally, I would never sign a buyer agency agreement if you threw that to me right at the very beginning of working with you. You'd have a very long, hard conversation with me because I'd be like, doesn't the listing agent pay, or the listing pay you, not I? So it's your decision. The coach is trying to coach you in how to do it. That's great, but now here's the other devil's advocate. So you've got this, right? And now your buyer's saying, no, I'm not going to pay you 3% because this house is only paying 2.5 and I don't have 0.5%. And you're going to say, but this says I get 3%. And then you're going to come to me and you're going to go, we're mutual and now my buyer's refusing to pay me 3%. I want to sue him. I want my 3% because you're going to have to sue him. And that means you're going to have to get a lawyer. And our lawyer, before they're going to take any case on buyer agency agreement, first has to tell us that they feel confident, like 95% confident that they'll win. then you're going to have to realize that whatever cost the lawyer is to us to get that 0.5%, all those fees are going to be deducted from whatever amount of money we get. And then whatever's left over, it'll come to you. And you are now going to be socially badmouthed by that person all over all social media that you're the agent that everyone should watch out for because this agent sues their buyers. My recommendation is don't do it.
So just leave it blank.
Well, I'm just saying you can go for the 3% there. You can leave it blank on compensation and take whatever compensation you want. What you all need to realize is what buyer agency is just a piece of paper. I don't know many brokerages that are going to enforce that buyer to pay you money. And I've had agents come to me and go, well, my buyer was out this weekend, they were at an open house, and this buyer that was sitting there wrote up a contract, and now they're in contract with them, and I've been working with them the last month and a half, and I have a buyer agency agreement, and now I feel I want my 3% commission, and I give them the same speech I just did. And then you know their light bulb goes off, and they go, oh, this is one of those hard learning lessons that I'll never forget. We don't sue our buyers for commission, folks. If they ended up going with another person, even though you're in buyer agency, you might want to take a look at yourself and go, what did I do that made them feel that they needed to use this other agent? Obviously, you didn't communicate with them well enough that don't listen to what anybody says at an open house about urgency to write it up really quick, because they have one purpose only, and that is to get you to be their buyer. Because if that person sitting in that house, if their name is not on that listing outside, they don't care about selling that house for a seller. All they care about is snagging a buyer to buy that house or go buy another house with them. That's the only reason they're sitting there. And I tell that to my buyers. We're right up front. And I say, you want to work with me. And if you're going to work with me, we're going to get you in the house before the open house. And if they are going to go see an open house, I make sure I remind them of that before they go see. And I call them immediately, like, when are you going? I'll call them. I'll just say, hey, what'd you think? Do we need to write right now? Because I can write it quicker than that agent who's sitting there till 4 p.m. to write it. Okay? So you just got to be really on top of your clients and good communication and providing excellent service so that they don't even consider leaving you. Because the minute you send that client out to open houses without you, trust me, every single open they're going to, those agents are trying to snag them. All their scripts are about getting the buyer. If you have someone looking at new construction, especially on the east side, and there's projects being built, you better tell them really quick, if ever they're asked to sign a register, that they better always inform them right up front that they're working with an agent and that it's me. And make sure that's written down, because if not, there's registration policies with all these construction sites out here by the big builders saying that if they come in and they don't say they have an agent, they're not going to give you 3%, folks. They're going to give you 1%. Because the builder's going to say the only reason they bought it is because my on-site agent sold them the house. You didn't. And that's why we have a registration policy. So you got to really, really educate them before you release them on their own, okay, to protect yourself. So it looks like we have an offer. Oh, Robbie, where are the KW disclosures located again?
Yeah, I'm just typing. Actually,
aren't they in the market intranet?
Market Center intranet, my KW Market Center intranet.
Under documents?
Under documents.
All right. Do you hear that? Do you hear that, Lenny? Market Center intranet, look under documents, and you'll find it. Okay?
Yeah, I was typing for. So going back to your initial thing about, so even if we waived financing, you still wanted to include 22A.
Yes.
But which option?
It's just, okay, folks, when you waive inspections, Do you still put Form 35 in there?
Correct, yeah.
Yes,
After
you do. You
report
check the box waive, or you check the box you pre-inspected. You still put a 22A in because you're still financing your deal. You're still disclosing the kind of financing you're doing, and
Right.
and here's the loan, and then you're waiving it with the proper forms. There's no box on 22A that you check that says you're waiving financing. That's why we have 22AW, 22AR. Okay?
Got it.
All right.
Thank
Do
you.
you use buyer's agency agreements?
Okay, do I use buyer agency agreements?
I do.
I will let the cat out of the bag, and I'm sure there'll be people that will argue with me. I have never once used a buyer agency agreement in my entire career. No. And have I lost clients?
No.
A couple,
A couple.
not many. And why did I lose them? Because we were not communicating with the client properly. I'm telling you, you will lose your clients if you don't communicate regularly. If you go 2 weeks searching for their homes and nothing's popped up that meets their criteria because they're so specific and it's this 4-block area, and you haven't told them you've been looking every day for 4 weeks and door knocking around there, they don't know what you're doing. They just know 2 weeks you've done nothing because you haven't communicated, and you're going to lose them. Because that buyer's going to go to a party, and buyers, what do they talk about all the time? Buying a house. They're going to be at parties, they're going to be out with friends. Hey, yeah, we're in the process of buying a home. It's been really challenging, blah, blah, blah. Oh, really? Hey, I'm over here at the party. I bought a house. It was a great experience. How's it going for you? I know what you're going through. Oh, well, it's kind of been frustrating. We haven't even heard from him for 2 weeks. What? You haven't heard from your guy for 2 weeks? My guy was in communication with us all the time. Are you sure you're working with the right agent? Because, man, he got in, he negotiated its winning contract. You want to know his information? Yeah, I do. I want to give him a call because I haven't heard from my guy for 2 weeks. Next thing you know, you're going to get an email on Monday saying, hey, thanks a lot. We really, appreciate the time and effort you put in with us, but we've decided to go with another agent because we felt like you weren't meeting our needs. That happens, folks, all the time. As far as not using a buyer agency agreement, I'm just really upfront with them when I'm in an interview with them. I tell them right up front, I say, I'm not worried about the commission. And quite honestly, I don't think any agent should ever worry about the commission. Because if an agent's throwing at me right up front in my first meeting that they want to guarantee a 3% commission, my thought is they only care about commission. They don't even care about me and what I want. They're just thinking about the money. How sincere is this person I'm working with? I'm very clear in my buyer consultations. I say, many times I don't even know my commissions. I don't even read them when I'm looking at the listing agreements, folks. I see it, or the listing. I only see it after I'm usually mutual, and I go, oh, I wonder what I'm making. And then I go in and go, oh, this is a 2.5, whatever. I tell them, I say, I'm not worried about the commission. I'll take whatever a seller pays me. And the reason I'm not worried about the commission is that I'm more concerned about a lifelong relationship with you. I'm worried about providing you with the best service and getting you in the home that you want, educating you so that you know every step of the way. All the decisions are yours, but I'm going to provide you with all the information so you know you're making the right decision for you. And I'm going to be there again when you sell this house, because I'm certainly not going to let you buy a house that I can't see us being able to sell. I'm going to tell you that house you're buying, what would help it to make more money when you sell, and if there's something about the house that just can't be fixed that would affect you on price. Like, for instance, if you're right beside I-5, the noise from the freeway is always going to affect you, and it will always make the pricing less than 2 or 3 blocks over. I'm very upfront, and I talk to him, and I say to him, so what I'm asking you in return is that you commit to work with me. Do you want to work with me? Yes. Great. Well, I want to work with you. I also want to promise from you that if along the process, if you're frustrated with us, my team, you feel we're not providing the service you want at any point, to let us know immediately so we can make the change and make it right. We don't like our clients to feel like they can't tell us something we did is wrong. We want them to know that we can hear whatever you have to say, because that's the kind of 5-star service we deliver. All I ask of you, buyer, in return is that you refer me clients and that you write up a great testimonial once we close. Have I lost clients without buyer agency? A couple. But you could ask that same question of people who use buyer agency. Have you lost some clients using buyer agency? And they'll probably say a couple. So, yes, you can use buyer agency. Use whatever you need that gives you the feeling that they are committed to working with you. But you shouldn't be worrying about if they're going to leave you or not, because you're in good communication and you're providing them with really good service so that they never think about it. I have a question here really quick. I think,
Nope.
John, the coaches aren't suggesting that we go after buyers for compensation. They're explaining it as giving agents the right to ask FSBOs or less than 3% sellers for 3%, but never from buyers. You know what, you guys? What John's saying is the coaches are saying this allows you, you know what, you don't, what is written in this buyer agency agreement I just said is saying that your buyer is paying you 3%. It's not saying the seller is going to guarantee it. And I know what the coaches are saying. The coaches are saying, well, you could show that then to the seller or the listing agent and say, well, you know, they're guaranteeing me at 3%. Will you guys cough up the 3% so we can write this deal? You're walking a very thin line, because there's also in the rules that you as a agent can never put undue pressure on a seller or a listing agent of making a contract contingent on your compensation being changed.
You're putting your interests ahead of the client?
Yeah, you're putting your interests ahead of the client, and you're putting in a position of seller, if you don't raise me this to a 3% commission, then my buyer probably won't buy your house. You could put yourself in a position of getting no commission on that deal. Because the rules are very clear, you cannot put undue pressure on them. Outside, but that's why they advertise what they're paying in commission. So be very, very careful if you think you're going to just blindly go in and get 3%. I know agents have done it, but they're not making it part of the contract. They're just saying, hey, you know, do you think if I bring you in a really great price that your client would be willing to pay me that other 0.5% because I'm doing the working so hard? I mean, that's not putting it in a position of, hey, we're not going to write unless you pay me this. And be very careful writing in a contract that they're going to pay you an additional 5%. Because then that's making it part of a contract. That's making it part of a negotiation that it has to be done to make this successful. That's my opinion. Don't think the coaches and I don't argue. We do. But that's real estate, and there's a lot of different opinions out there, just like lawyers all have different opinions.